The Texas sun hung mercilessly in the cloudless sky as Sarah Martinez clutched her 3-year-old daughter Emma closer to her chest, both of them seeking whatever shade they could find beneath the rusted bus stop sign on Highway 287. The metal was too hot to touch, but it was better than nothing. Emma's small hand gripped Sarah's faded denim jacket, her dark eyes wide with the kind of confusion that only children possess when their world suddenly stops making sense. "Mama, when are we going home?" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the distant hum of 18-wheelers, rumbling past their small town of Cedar Ridge. Sarah's throat tightened. Home. The word felt foreign now, like trying to speak a language she'd forgotten. 3 days ago, she'd had a home. 3 days ago, she'd had a job at the local diner, a small apartment above Mrs. Henderson's bakery, and something resembling a life. Now she had 2 garbage bags containing everything they owned, and $17 crumpled in her back pocket. "Soon, baby," she lied, smoothing Emma's tangled hair. Soon. The lie tasted bitter, but what else could she say? That the people of Cedar Ridge had decided she was cursed? That her neighbors, people she'd known since childhood, had turned their backs on her family? That her own mother had looked her in the eye and said, "I can't have this darkness in my house, Sarah. Think of your siblings." It had started 8 months ago when David, Emma's father, died in that car accident on his way to Austin. The town had whispered then too, but it was the kind of whisper that came with casseroles and condolences. Then Sarah's job at the insurance office was eliminated due to budget cuts, though everyone knew Martha Coleman's nephew needed work. The whispers grew louder. When Emma fell seriously ill with pneumonia in the spring and had to be hospitalized for 2 weeks, draining Sarah's meager savings, the whispers became accusations. "That family's got a dark cloud over them," she'd heard Mrs. Patterson say at the grocery store. "First the father, then the job, now the baby. It's not natural." But the final straw had come last week when old Mr. Garrett's prize bull somehow got loose and was found dead in the creek that ran behind the apartment building. The bull had been perfectly healthy, the vet said. No signs of disease, no obvious cause of death, just dead. "It's that Martinez girl," Garrett had announced at Mel's Tavern, his voice carrying the authority of a man whose family had owned land in Cedar Ridge for 4 generations. Ever since she moved into that apartment, nothing but bad luck follows her around. First her husband, then her job, then her kid gets sick. Now my bull. I'm telling you, that woman's cursed. The word spread through Cedar Ridge like wildfire in August. Cursed. Within 48 hours, Sarah had been asked to leave her job at the diner. "For the good of the business," Linda had said, unable to meet her eyes. Mrs. Henderson had given her a week's notice on the apartment, citing mysterious plumbing issues that needed the whole upstairs renovated. Sarah's mother had been the final blow. Standing on the porch of the house where Sarah had grown up, where she'd played in the backyard and learned to ride her bike in the driveway, Maria Martinez had crossed herself and shaken her head. "I'm sorry, Mija, but I can't. The neighbors are already talking, and your father's business. We can't afford to lose customers. You understand, don't you?" Understanding and accepting weren't the same thing, but Sarah had nodded anyway. She'd packed their few belongings, strapped Emma into the ancient Honda Civic that barely ran, and driven out of town. Except the car had broken down 12 miles outside Cedar Ridge, leaving them stranded on the highway with nowhere to go and no one to call. The sound of gravel crunching under tires pulled Sarah from her thoughts. A dusty pickup truck was slowing down, pulling over onto the shoulder about 50 feet ahead of them. Sarah's muscles tensed. In her experience, men who stopped for stranded women on lonely highways usually wanted something in return for their help. The driver's door opened, and a tall man stepped out. He was probably in his mid-50s, with graying hair beneath a worn Stetson and clothes that spoke of honest work, faded jeans, scuffed boots, a blue chambray shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He walked toward them slowly, his hands visible, his approach non-threatening. "Ma'am," he said, touching the brim of his hat. His voice was rough from years of calling across open fields, but there was kindness in it. "I'm Jack Morrison. I saw y'all out here when I drove by this morning, and now it's past noon and you're still here. Everything all right?" Sarah tightened her grip on Emma, who was studying the stranger with curious eyes. "Our car broke down," she said carefully. "We're just waiting for someone." Jack's weathered face didn't show any judgment, but his eyes moved from Sarah's hollow cheeks to Emma's too quiet demeanor to the garbage bags beside them. "Waiting for someone," he repeated gently. "How long you been waiting?" "Not long," Sarah lied again. Jack nodded slowly, his gaze moving to the old Honda sitting dead on the shoulder, its hood up and steam still visible, despite hours of cooling. "That your car there?" "Yes, sir." "Mind if I take a look? I've got some experience with engines." Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to maintain the pretense that everything was fine, that help was coming, that she wasn't completely desperate. But Emma shifted in her arms, and Sarah felt how warm her daughter was getting in the relentless heat. The child needed water, needed shade, needed better than this. I don't have money to pay for repairs," Sarah admitted. "Didn't ask for money," Jack said simply. "Asked if I could take a look." He walked over to the Honda without waiting for permission, studying the engine with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades keeping old equipment running. After a few minutes, he returned, shaking his head. "I'm afraid that engine's done for," he said. "Looks like the head gasket blew, and on a car that age, it's not worth fixing. I'm sorry." Sarah felt the last of her hope drain away. Without the car, she was truly stranded. No way to get to the next town, no way to look for work, no way to start over somewhere else. "Ma'am," Jack continued, his voice gentle, "I don't mean to pry, but it's hot as blazes out here, and that little girl needs to get out of this sun. My ranch is about 5 miles up the road. Why don't you let me give you both a ride? Get you some water and a cool place to sit while you figure out your next step." Sarah's instincts screamed caution. She didn't know this man, didn't know what he might want from her. But Emma was getting heavier in her arms, and the child's breathing was becoming more labored in the heat. What choice did she have? "I'm Sarah," she said finally. "This is Emma. Pleased to meet you both," Jack said, and meant it. "Let me help you with those bags." As they walked toward his truck, Sarah couldn't help but notice how Emma perked up slightly in the air conditioning, how the man called Jack had thoughtfully positioned the vents to blow cool air toward the back seat where Emma sat. He didn't ask questions during the drive, didn't push for explanations about why a young mother and her child were stranded on a highway with everything they owned in garbage bags. The Morrison Ranch appeared gradually as they drove up a long dirt road lined with mesquite trees and cedar posts. The main house was modest but well maintained, painted white with a wraparound porch that looked like it caught good shade in the evenings. Outbuildings dotted the property, a barn, equipment sheds, and corrals that spoke of a working ranch, though Sarah noticed it seemed quiet for midday. "This is beautiful," Sarah said, meaning it. After months of apartments and town living, the open space felt like a balm to her soul. "It's home," Jack said simply. "Been in my family for 3 generations. Lost my wife 5 years back, so it's just me now." He parked near the house and helped them inside, the blessed coolness hitting them like a wave. The interior was clean but sparse, decorated with the practical functionality of a man living alone. Family photos lined the mantelpiece, a younger Jack with a pretty blonde woman, the same couple with 2 children, graduation photos, wedding pictures. "Let me get you both something cold to drink," Jack said, already moving toward the kitchen. "There's a bathroom down the hall if you need it." Sarah settled Emma on the couch, marveling at how quickly the child's color improved in the air conditioning. When Jack returned with glasses of ice water and a juice box for Emma, Sarah felt tears threatening. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know how much this means." Jack settled into a chair across from them, his own glass of water in hand. "Sometimes we all need help," he said quietly. No shame in that. For the first time in weeks, Sarah allowed herself to relax slightly. Maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. Maybe being called cursed didn't mean she was doomed to wander forever with her daughter, searching for a place where they could belong. Outside the window, the Texas landscape stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun, full of possibility and hope she'd almost forgotten how to feel. The guest bedroom at the Morrison Ranch hadn't been used in years, but Jack had prepared it with the quiet efficiency of a man accustomed to solving problems without fanfare. Clean sheets, fresh towels, and a small fan to supplement the central air conditioning. Sarah stood in the doorway, Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms after their first real meal in days, Jack's simple but hearty beef stew and cornbread. "I can't stay," Sarah said quietly, though her body betrayed her exhaustion. "This is too much. You've already done more than enough." Jack paused in his adjustment of the window blinds. The late afternoon sun was painting the room in golden hues, and somewhere in the distance, cattle were lowing as they moved toward water. "Where exactly are you planning to go?" he asked, not unkindly. The question hung in the air like dust motes in the fading light. Sarah had been asking herself the same thing for 3 days. Austin was 60 miles away, but without a car and with only $17, it might as well have been on the moon. San Antonio was closer, but she knew no one there. Every option seemed to require resources she didn't have. "I'll figure something out," she said. the words sounding hollow even to her own ears. Jack turned to face her, his weathered hands resting on his belt. "Sarah, it's almost evening, and that little girl's been through enough today. One night won't hurt anyone. Tomorrow we can look at your options with fresh eyes." The kindness in his voice nearly broke her. For months she'd grown accustomed to suspicious glances, whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room, the feeling that she carried some invisible stain that marked her as different, dangerous. But Jack Morrison looked at her like she was simply a person who needed help. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "You don't know me. You don't know what people say about me." Jack's expression didn't change. "What do people say?" Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "That I'm cursed, that bad things happen to people around me." The words tasted like ash in her mouth, but once started, she couldn't stop. "My husband died. I lost my job. Emma got sick. And then Mr. Garrett's bull." She trailed off, unable to finish. "And you believe that?" Jack asked quietly. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Sarah admitted. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I do bring bad luck." Jack was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the dim light. Then he walked to the dresser and picked up a framed photograph, a young woman with kind eyes and Jack's smile, standing beside a hospital bed with a tiny baby in her arms. "This is my daughter, Katie," he said. "She was born 3 months premature. The doctors said she wouldn't make it through the night." He set the photo down carefully. "My wife, Helen, she prayed every night for months. Some folks in town said we should accept God's will, that maybe the baby wasn't meant to survive. They said we were fighting fate." Sarah felt Emma's weight shift in her arms as the child settled deeper into sleep. "Katie lived," Jack continued. "She's 32 now, a veterinarian in Colorado, has 2 kids of her own. But according to some people's logic, Helen and I were cursed too. Young parents with a sick baby, medical bills we couldn't afford, a ranch that was barely breaking even." He looked directly at Sarah. "Funny how curses look different depending on who's telling the story." "That's different," Sarah protested weakly. "Is it? Or is it just easier for people to blame you than to admit that sometimes life is hard and unfair and doesn't make sense?" Jack's voice was gentle but firm. "You lost your husband in an accident that had nothing to do with you. You lost your job because someone else needed it more, or because their family had more influence. Your daughter got sick because children get sick, especially when they're dealing with stress and change. And an old bull died because old animals die, sometimes without explanation." Sarah wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. In the rational light of Jack's explanation, the town's accusations seemed suddenly thin, built more on fear and superstition than facts. "One night," Jack said again. "That's all I'm asking. Let the little one sleep in a real bed. Give yourself time to think." Sarah nodded, too tired to argue anymore. Jack showed her where to find extra blankets, pointed out the bathroom down the hall, and left her with a quiet good night that held no expectations or hidden meanings. After she'd settled Emma in the bed and changed into the one clean shirt she had left, Sarah found herself unable to sleep, despite her exhaustion. She stood at the window, looking out at the ranch yard bathed in moonlight. The silence was profound. No traffic, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, no sounds of the city that never quite went to sleep. Just the gentle whisper of wind through the mesquite trees and the distant sound of night birds calling to each other across the darkness. She must have dozed, because the next thing she knew, pale dawn light was filtering through the curtains, and the smell of coffee was drifting down the hallway. Emma was still sleeping, one small hand curled against her cheek, looking more peaceful than she had in weeks. Sarah found Jack in the kitchen, already dressed and moving with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd been up for hours. "Morning," he said, not looking up from the eggs he was scrambling. "Coffee's on the counter. Hope you like it strong." "You don't have to cook for us," Sarah said, though the smell made her stomach clench with hunger. "Already cooking for myself," Jack replied. "Doesn't take much more effort to make extra." He glanced at her over his shoulder. "Sleep all right?" "Better than I have in weeks," Sarah admitted. The truth was, she'd slept deeply and dreamlessly for the first time since leaving Cedar Ridge. No anxiety dreams about eviction notices or medical bills. No startling awake in the middle of the night, wondering how she'd feed Emma the next day. Jack set a plate in front of her, eggs, bacon and toast, made from what looked like homemade bread. The simple kindness of it threatened to bring tears to her eyes again. "Jack," she began, but he held up a hand. "Eat first," he said. "Then we'll talk." Emma woke up while Sarah was finishing her breakfast, padding into the kitchen in her pajamas with her hair sticking up in all directions. Jack greeted her with the same gentle courtesy he'd shown Sarah, offering her orange juice and asking if she liked her eggs scrambled or fried. "Scrambled," Emma said shyly, climbing onto the chair beside her mother. "Please." "Scrambled it is," Jack said, already cracking eggs into the pan. As Emma ate, Jack and Sarah sat at the kitchen table with their coffee, the morning light streaming through windows that looked out over pastures dotted with cattle. In the distance, Sarah could see a small herd of horses grazing near a stock tank. "It's beautiful here," Sarah said. "Peaceful. It's a good life," Jack agreed. "Hard work, but honest work. The land doesn't lie to you or spread gossip or treat you differently because of things you can't control." He paused, studying his coffee. "I've got a proposition for you, if you're interested." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "What kind of proposition?" "I need help around here," Jack said simply. "Since Helen died, I've been managing alone, but the truth is there's more work than one person can handle. Bookkeeping, meal planning, general maintenance around the house. I've been putting off hiring someone because," he shrugged, "because I didn't want a stranger in Helen's space, I suppose." "I don't understand," Sarah said carefully. "I'm offering you a job," Jack said. "Room and board for you and Emma plus a salary. Nothing fancy, but enough to get you back on your feet. Emma could enroll in the school district here. It's small but good, and you'd have time to figure out what comes next." Sarah stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You barely know me. What if the people in town are right? What if I really do bring bad luck?" Jack's laugh was warm and genuine. "Sarah, I'm a rancher in Texas. I've survived droughts, floods, market crashes, disease outbreaks, and every kind of natural disaster you can imagine. If I can handle all that, I think I can handle whatever luck you might bring with you." Emma looked up from her eggs, syrup from the pancakes Jack had added to her plate sticky on her chin. "Mama, can we stay with the horses?" For the first time in months, Sarah allowed herself to hope. Maybe curses were just stories people told when they needed someone to blame. Maybe sometimes, when everything fell apart, it was just making room for something better to grow. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Jack said. "Take all the time you need." But even as she said it, Sarah knew her answer. In this quiet kitchen, with her daughter laughing at something Jack had said, and the Texas morning stretching out before them, full of possibility, she could feel the weight of other people's fears and superstitions beginning to lift from her shoulders. Maybe it was time to stop running from whispers and start building towards something real. 3 weeks into her new life at the Morrison Ranch, Sarah had established a routine that felt almost normal. Emma would wake with the sunrise, padding barefoot to the kitchen, where Jack would already be finishing his first cup of coffee. They'd have breakfast together, the three of them forming an unlikely family around the old oak table that Helen Morrison had picked out 30 years ago. The work suited Sarah better than she'd expected. Jack's bookkeeping had been neglected since Helen's death, and Sarah found satisfaction in bringing order to the chaos of receipts, invoices, and tax documents. She'd always been good with numbers, a skill that had served her well at the insurance office, and here it felt purposeful rather than routine. Emma had adapted to ranch life with the resilience that children possess. She'd claimed the barn cats as her personal responsibility, named all the horses, much to Jack's amusement, and had convinced him to let her help collect eggs from the small flock of chickens behind the house. The color had returned to her cheeks, and she laughed more in a day than she had in the last month they'd lived in Cedar Ridge. But Sarah knew this fragile peace couldn't last forever. The outside world had a way of intruding, no matter how carefully you tried to keep it at bay. The intrusion came on a Thursday morning in the form of a white pickup truck, kicking up dust as it barreled down the ranch road. Sarah recognized it immediately, her brother Miguel's truck, the one he used for his landscaping business. Her stomach clenched as she watched him park near the house, his face grim through the windshield. Jack was in the barn, and Emma was napping on the porch swing, exhausted from a morning of helping repair fence posts. Sarah met Miguel halfway between the house and his truck, her arms crossed defensively across her chest. "Mama's worried sick," Miguel said without preamble. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his work boots scuffing the dry earth. "It's been almost a month, Sarah. We didn't know if you were alive or dead." "Now you know," Sarah replied, her voice cooler than she'd intended. "I'm fine. Emma's fine." Miguel's eyes swept over the ranch, taking in the well-maintained buildings, the healthy cattle in the distance, the obvious prosperity of the operation. "This is where you've been? Whose place is this?" "Jack Morrison's. He gave me a job." "A job?" Miguel's tone suggested he found this suspicious. "What kind of job?" Sarah bristled at the implication. "Bookkeeping, house management, things like that." "It's honest work, Miguel. I'm not saying it isn't. He ran a hand through his dark hair, so much like their father's. "But Sarah, people are talking. About you taking up with some old rancher. About Emma." "About Emma what?" Sarah's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Miguel had the grace to look ashamed. "You know how people talk. They're saying maybe it's better this way, that maybe Emma's better off away from the family." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She'd known her family's rejection was complete, but hearing it spoken aloud, hearing that they thought Emma was better off without them, brought fresh pain. "And what do you think, Miguel?" she asked quietly. Her brother was quiet for a long moment, studying the ground between them. "I think I miss my sister," he said finally. "I think Emma deserves to know her uncle and her grandparents. But I also think—" He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I think maybe you're safer here than you were in town." The admission surprised her. Miguel had always been pragmatic, but she hadn't expected him to acknowledge what they both knew, that Cedar Ridge had become toxic for her and Emma. "Mama wants to see Emma," Miguel continued. "She's been asking about her granddaughter every day. Whatever happened between you two, Emma shouldn't have to pay for it." Sarah felt the familiar weight of guilt settling on her shoulders. Emma did deserve to know her family, to have more than just Sarah and Jack in her life. But the memory of her mother's face, the way Maria had crossed herself as if Sarah carried some contagion, was still too fresh. "She can see Emma," Sarah said carefully, "but not in Cedar Ridge. If Mama wants to visit, she can come here." Miguel's eyebrows rose. "You think this Morrison guy would be okay with that?" Before Sarah could answer, Jack's voice carried across the yard from the barn entrance. "Sarah, everything all right out there?" The two men sized each other up as Jack approached, and Sarah found herself studying the contrast between them. Miguel, compact and wiry from years of physical labor, his clothes bearing the dust of job sites, and his manner carrying the defensive edge of someone who'd had to fight for everything he'd earned. Jack, taller and broader, moving with the confident ease of a man on his own land, his presence suggesting authority without aggression. "Jack, this is my brother Miguel," Sarah said. "Miguel, Jack Morrison." Jack extended his hand. "Any family of Sarah's is welcome here." Miguel shook the offered hand, his expression cautious but respectful. "I appreciate you looking after my sister, Mr. Morrison." "She's been looking after herself just fine," Jack replied. "I just provided a place for her to do it." The simple statement seemed to diffuse some of Miguel's tension. "I was telling Sarah that our mother would like to see Emma. It's been hard on her not knowing how they're doing." Jack glanced at Sarah, reading the conflict in her expression. "Your mother's welcome to visit any time," he said. "This Sunday would work well if that suits everyone. I'll be in town anyway picking up supplies." Sarah realized he was offering to make himself scarce, to give her family privacy for their reunion. The thoughtfulness of the gesture made her throat tight. "I'll tell her," Miguel said. He looked around the ranch again, this time with something approaching approval. "It's a good place for Emma to grow up." "She's thriving here," Jack agreed. "Happy, healthy, making friends with every animal on the property." As if summoned by their conversation, Emma appeared around the corner of the house, having awakened from her nap. She stopped short when she saw Miguel, her small face uncertain. "Emma, come here, baby," Sarah called. "Do you remember your Uncle Miguel?" Emma approached slowly, staying close to Sarah's side. Miguel knelt down to her level, his expression softening. "Hey there, little one," he said gently. "You've gotten so big." Emma studied him seriously. "Are you going to take us back to the place where people were mean to Mama?" The innocent question hit both adults like a hammer blow. Miguel's face flushed, and Sarah felt tears threatening. Even at 3 years old, Emma had understood more about their situation than Sarah had realized. "No, sweetheart," Miguel said, his voice rough with emotion. "You and Mama are safe here. I just came to visit and see how you're doing." Emma seemed to consider this, then brightened. "Do you want to meet the chickens? They have names. This is Mr. Jack's ranch, and he lets me help with everything." Miguel spent the next hour getting the grand tour from Emma, who chatted excitedly about every aspect of ranch life. Sarah watched from the porch as her brother admired the barn cats, listened solemnly to Emma's explanation of proper egg-collecting technique, and even allowed himself to be introduced to the horses. When he was ready to leave, Miguel pulled Sarah aside. "She's happy here," he said. "Really happy. I haven't seen her like this since before David died." "She feels safe here," Sarah replied. "We both do." Miguel nodded. "I'll talk to Mama. She'll come Sunday if you're sure Mr. Morrison doesn't mind." "He doesn't mind," Sarah said. "He's not like that." "No," Miguel agreed, glancing toward the barn where Jack was working. "He doesn't seem like he is." He hesitated, then pulled Sarah into a quick hug. "I'm sorry, sis, for everything. for not standing up for you when it mattered. You had your own family to think about, Sarah said, though the acknowledgement helped heal something inside her. After Miguel left, Sarah found Jack in the barn, ostensibly checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. But she suspected he'd given her family privacy while staying close enough to help if needed. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For making him welcome. For offering to leave Sunday. For—" She gestured helplessly, unable to find words for everything he'd given them. Jack straightened, studying her face in the dim light filtering through the barn windows. "Sarah, you don't owe me gratitude for treating you like family. That's just how it should be. Family." The word hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was quite ready to examine, but Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition that maybe home wasn't a place you were born into, but something you built with people who chose to love you despite your broken pieces. Sunday would bring its own challenges, but for now she was content to stand in the quiet barn, breathing in the scent of hay and horses, feeling like she finally belonged somewhere. Outside, Emma's laughter carried on the evening breeze as she played with the barn cats, and Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay.